Hey, what's up? My name is Matt Dietz, and this is the Agency Launch Podcast. I am an active 17-year insurance agency owner, and I run a different shop than many of my peers. I've got 4,300 policies, and I have 2 staff members, and I have already made all the mistakes for you. So this podcast is to share with you all that I know. I come in and I record things as I think about them. I come in and I record things as they happen in my agency, and anything that I can think of that will help you, I come in and I share it. So I talk about sales and marketing and staffing and retention and everything that I know works in an agency like this. So I appreciate you listening, and let's get on with it. Hey, what's up? All right. So I wanted to talk about a project that I worked on over the past couple of weeks that occupied a lot of my time. And I just want to walk you through kind of what happened. I got a referral from a client, a good client, and he sent something over. He's like, hey, we're buying this building. It's a lessor's risk. So he's going to buy the building and there's going to be tenants inside. I need insurance for it. We close on the 23rd. Cool. Of course, this is what we work for, right? So I look up the building, and I actually know what building it is. It's here in town in Boise. And I look inside of the building and I'm like, all right, what do we got in here? Well, there's a bail bonds shop. There is a aquarium, there's a bookstore, and there's a gymnastics studio. So, and this thing's built in 1976. So while I like writing, lessor risks, they should be right in our wheelhouse. There are some red flags immediately that came up, because the way this works is with many companies, if they would not insure the building or the business inside, they're not going to write the building. Okay. I learned that many years ago. So with my company that I'm with, I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's no way in hell we're going to write this, because I know that we are conservative and we are not going to be happy with a gymnastics studio, because if something bad happens inside of any of these businesses, the lawyers sue everybody, including the business owner. So if you have a little gymnast that breaks her back, and, they want to blame the building owner because of maintenance issues, and the mat slipped because there was a leak. The likelihood of that happening is slim, but you know what? It probably happened once, and then the whole industry, gets twitchy, and it changes. These things, millions of dollars are at risk for stuff like this. So there are companies that, the more conservative companies, or the preferred companies, or the admitted companies, whatever word you want to use, are more conservative, and they will not do that. The bail bonds thing, the aquarium, there's probably 1 million gallons of water in there or something like that. So I go and get the decline from my company immediately. It took about 7 seconds, okay? Then I went to a brokerage that I work with. I'm trying to consolidate all my outside business into one place. So I got appointed with another brokerage who has access to other admitted carriers. And so this is new for me. This is a new brokerage. So I call some of the resources that I have. I say, hey, where would you place this? And they said, well, we would place it here or here. Or so they gave me 4 admitted carriers to go through. I'm like, okay, cool. So we applied all of them. They all declined. Because of the aquarium and the gymnastics studio. They're like, we're not going to write this because of what's inside. And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, what's the problem here? So then we start going to some non-admitted carriers, the non-preferred ones, the one that will write more risky stuff. And one of the questions that we got was, when was the building updated? Plumbing, HVAC, wiring, electrical, and roof. So we got to find that out. And that took some heavy lifting too. I mean, not really, but, I called the gal that is putting this thing together, and I was like, I need to know when the wiring and the plumbing were updated. And she's like, well, I'm not sure. So while we're getting declines all over town, I'm trying to figure out when the wiring and plumbing was, and she's not getting that information for me. And so I go ahead and start doing some research, and I reach out to the realtor on the other side who's selling it, and I said, hey, I need to know when the wiring and plumbing is because it makes a difference. 55-year-old plumbing and wiring is a problem for 45-year-old plumbing and wiring is a problem for insurance companies. These guys may pay a higher rate. And he connects me to the property manager. And so I connect with the property manager, and she helps me out. Eventually what ends up happening is she gets me access to the mechanical room. And so we run out there, and there are ways that you can find out when this stuff was updated or built in. Okay, so you can actually just go to the fuse box, and those are usually stamps or there are stickers that say when these things were installed and when they were updated. And did you know that every pipe that was ever put in a building, each pipe has a date stamped on it? Like copper pipes have a date stamped on it, and so you can go and you can find this stuff out, get your hands dirty, get out there, figure this stuff out. And so we did, and we took a bunch of pictures, and so we end up submitting all this stuff in. We're like, okay, yes, this stuff was updated in 2011. So we get that to our non-admitted carriers, and we're starting to get down to the wire, okay? And I am starting to get kind of twitchy because the first quote I got back that was declined, was $15,000. I got another one that came back with these admitted carriers. These are admitted carriers now, for $10,000. I had a 15 and a 10, but they both were declined once they hit a human being's hands. So I'm like, this thing's going to be over 20, easy. Now I'm talking to the guy who's buying this building, and he's like, the current policy on this is $6,300. And that's what they're basing the loan on, I'm sure, and the payments and all that stuff. And I'm like, all right, $6,300. When I did talk to the property manager, and I'm asking her all these questions, I said, we got bids that were like 15 and 10. Like, this thing might cost $20,000. She goes, we just reinsured this building. We just shopped our insurance like 2 or 3 years ago, and we got this for like $6,300. So now I'm starting to pull my hair out, right? I'm like, I know there's a carrier out there that's going to do this for under 10. When you're pushing this stuff through, brokerages and non-admitted carriers and stuff like that, they have access to like a dozen, 15, 20 companies. So I've been declined by like, 10 companies, and I might get offers from like 2 or 3. And non-admitted carriers are incredibly, they're a lot more expensive. So I get a bid on Friday. This thing closes Monday, right? I get a bid Friday for $36,000, and I am losing my mind. I'm like, I cannot put this number in front of this guy. Like, I can't put a 30. He's expecting it to be 6 or 7. And so I call the underwriter, and I'm like, Jenny, what the hell? Why is this $36,000? They're paying $6,000 for this right now. She said, I guess I could say this is something that I learned, but I don't. But the way the story ends, now I'm questioning if I learned it or not. But when I was talking to her, she's like, look, Matt, she's like, this risk in our entire industry is getting harder to place. The companies are becoming more scared. The underwriting requirements are getting a lot more tighter with fire lines changing. Companies aren't liking these risks, and they're charging a lot more, and there's a lot to it. I mean, you could talk about, inflation, building costs, catastrophic, fires that are taking out entire towns, tornadoes, hurricanes. All of these things that have happened in our country over the last 10 years are finally starting to affect something like this. So I'm like, God, maybe this is the way it is. Maybe the entire industry is changing right in front of me, which it is. It didn't used to be this hard to place a freaking building like this, right? And so I end up calling a buddy of mine who you may know. I've interviewed him on the show before. His name is Colin. I'm like, Colin, I need your help. He's like, dude, what do you need? And so I call him, and I'm like, I got a building this is all this. I've done all the work for you. I'm like, here's everything I got. Here's what's in it. Here are pictures. Here's everything. He's like, all right, hang on. Let me check. So he quotes it up in like, 15 seconds in his system, just using, some basic information. He's like, all right, if I can get this approved, it's going to be $6,700. And worst case scenario, it's going to be 73, but I got to get it through. He goes, I think the aquarium and the gymnastics studio might be a problem, but let me call you back. So he gets on the phone with an underwriter. The underwriter's like, all right, the only problem we're going to have is the aquarium. Let me see if I can get this aquarium approved. I'll call you back. So we waited a day, and I hit Colin up in the morning because it's closing. And he's like, dude, my guy's not calling me back. So I went over his head, and I got a message, and I'm trying to get it approved. I'm like, okay. What ends up happening is the guy that he talked to originally was going to decline it, and Colin went over his head, and he said, and he got another underwriter to approve it. He's like, as long as I have an approval and an underwriter's number, I can issue it. He goes, and that's what I did. And so we did it. We got it approved, and he even got it in at the $6,700. So, what did I learn from this? I'm not even sure. Okay. I've learned that risks like this are harder to place. And I knew early in this process that there was going to be a company that was going to take this thing. But I would say back 5 or 6 years ago, we probably would have had 5 or 6 companies that would take this. And I went through probably 15 to 18, and we wound up finding one. This is why relationships on the ground in your town with other qualified professionals are so important. Honestly, at the point, of course, I would have liked to write this business. Of course, I would have loved to write a $36,000 policy, but I knew that we were going to find it somewhere differently. They're different. And we found it with a preferred frickin' carrier too, which was a frustrating experience, but I was glad that I was able to do right by my client. I was communicating with my client the whole time. Every day or every other day, I was like, we got to decline. Here's what we're running up against. These are the businesses inside, and preferred carriers don't like that. The wiring and plumbing is important. These are things that insurance companies are worried about. And so I'm communicating this with my client throughout the process so they understand what's going on. Because this took like 10 days, and I don't want them to think that I'm not doing anything along the way. I'm working my tail off trying to get this thing insured for them. So I want them to understand what the work I'm doing on the ground for them, and that we wound up finding a good price for them with the right coverage. And so I hope that they understand, what we went through to get that, and that I'm not going to get paid for it, which is fine. Like, I want him to appreciate the work that was done, so that next time he needs something, he's going to come to me, and he's going to trust that we're going to find the right product for him with the right coverage with the fair price. So it was a lot. It was a big project, and every day, this thing moved glacially slow. And we were given about 12 days to get it done, and we got it done on the 11th day, thanks to some help from Colin. So Colin, thank you for bailing me out on this. And it was a really interesting experience. So this was just something I wanted to share with you about kind of what commercial can look like, and what looks like a simple risk can be a lot of work. And at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that we're doing right by our client. And again, I was pretty bummed that we weren't able to place it. I was pretty frustrated with how tight some of the carriers are getting. But I think that's kind of the way the industry is trending. So I just wanted to share that thought with you. And I was proud to get it done. And there you go. So my name's Matt. This is Agency Launch. You can find me all over the place. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Dietz Agency. Don't forget, agencylaunch.net is the masterclass for you to learn everything that I know about running an insurance agency. So check that out. And I just really appreciate you listening. Also, don't forget, podcast is the code word for if you want to get 10% off of anything at agencylaunch.net. So type that in. Thank you so much, and keep up the good work.